Morning, friends. Morning. Happy February 1st. Indeed. Well, speaking of February, we're going to talk about a place that's a little warmer than here. As many of you know, I spent most of my adulthood in a city a little far away from here called New Orleans, Louisiana. That is not New Orleans. That's Providence, Rhode Island, but it's still a city. I went there for a mission trip in high school, and then while I was there, I developed a big heart for the city, and I ended up going to college there. And after I graduated, I stuck around for a good couple of years and worked with a college ministry called Chi Alpha. Sometimes I go back to Connecticut, where I grew up, for the summers. And the summer after my freshman year, when I went back, my parents had just started going to a church plant in the area. And so there was a lot of new people around there that we didn't know very well. And there was one lady one week that they had recently met, so they wanted to introduce to me. And we started talking about me living in New Orleans and going to school there. And we were just doing that just to share our lives and give some context for everything. And also, being in New Orleans sometimes was an interesting conversation point, because people would ask, why did you go so far away for school? Or, have you tried this restaurant that I went to when I traveled there? Have you been to that festival? And so it was a good way of connecting with different people. And they shared different favorite memories that they had down there, if they had been tourists or they were students or they had lived there at some point. But that was not the case with this lady. The first thing that this woman said was, I heard there's a lot of spiritual darkness down there. And I was a little taken aback by that. Well, number one, first, it would appear that my life didn't seem as cool to her as I thought it was. So I was like, well, you can't win them all. Second, that's just a really interesting is a good word to describe what that's like to describe someone else's home the first time that you meet them. To put it perhaps a little bit more bluntly, her saying that, especially with the context of her being a Christian and me being a Christian and us having some sort of shared understanding about what spiritual darkness is, it felt rather rude for her to say that in our first conversation. I'm not always someone who thinks of quick responses, which is probably for the best, because sometimes I do have some pretty strong ones. The words uncalled for have been used to describe the way I speak sometimes. So luckily, in this moment, God blessed me with not being able to form a great response to that. And so we just carried on the conversation, and then me and my parents went our way after church. And the thing here is that I was thinking about that conversation for a little bit afterwards, and I remember thinking to myself, how would you feel if I described the place that you lived like that as a place full of spiritual darkness? Would you receive that well in our first conversation? I would like to think probably not. I know there's some truth to what this lady said, because New Orleans does have a certain history and association with some spiritual things and practices. It had a voodoo queen at one point named Marie Laveau. You can hear her in different songs. There are people who practiced it in the past. It's mostly a dead religion now, except for some touristy shops in the French Quarter that like to kind of sell it up to make money. But New Orleans also has had a long reputation for being a place of more typical spiritual hardships that you can find elsewhere, like alcoholism or sexual sin or drug abuse. It's also for a long time grappled with a pretty high poverty rate. And related to that, it was also the murder capital of the US for a lot of years, not anymore, but it was for a long time the place with the highest per capita number of murders. And on top of that, it periodically experiences major damage from different storms or floods. And so there's this genuine degree of hopelessness or defeatism that is not hard to find if you go to the city, which is actually why we're taking a mission trip there this upcoming June, because there are real hardships and there's people there that need hope. And there's ministries that love that community day in, day out every year that could use help coming from the outside. But there's also everyday issues in New Orleans that really aren't closely related to spiritual darkness. They're just plain annoying. It's annoying getting stuck in parade traffic after church and after you had lunch and you're ready for your little nap. But you can't go home because there's people riding horses and doing donuts in front of your street, and you're just like, I just want to get some sleep. It's also annoying to get a ticket from a red light camera because you turned right on red and there was no sign saying no right on red, but the camera still flashed anyway. Or a school camera, I know that we have those around here, because you were trying to accelerate and brake at the same time and you happen to go a little bit over what the speed limit was, and once again, you still got a ticket. There's also a certain grimace you make when you don't see a pothole in time and you feel the underside of your car scrape the street really quick, which people say like, oh, we have potholes here. No, you do not have potholes here by comparison. They have craters there. Speaking of streets, there's certain streets in the city that just flood whenever it rains hard. It doesn't have to be a named hurricane, doesn't have to be any levees breaking. Just if it rains hard enough, they will flood. I took a picture of this outside of my apartment a little while back. That's my roommate JP right there, nice guy. And so like our street would usually do that whenever there was a big rainstorm that would last for a couple hours. And so I took the picture to commemorate having to walk through that mess going to and from when I had to move my car so it wouldn't get flooded. And so I'd hardly be the first to admit that New Orleans is not always the most functional city. Actually, in response to the city's broken infrastructure, a lot of locals have developed what I would describe as a creative sense of humor to cope with it. Here's an exemplary traffic cone monster to display that. And so people decide, you know what, if the city is not going to clean this up, then I'm just going to make use of it and cope with it as I will. But the truth is, wherever you live, there's going to be things that bother you. There's going to be reasons to be disappointed or upset with your surroundings. Now, maybe up here in the greater Providence and greater Boston areas, you're upset with the cost of living. I know I don't like how much I'm paying for rent right now. Maybe you're upset with how long it takes to get a medical appointment. That's one thing I've heard from a lot of people here is it takes a long time to find a doctor and get on their schedule. Maybe you're frustrated by the tax rate, or you're frustrated by your commute to Boston if you have to go up there for work, especially if there's an accident 95 or if the T is having another meltdown day. Maybe you're upset at having to go the other direction on the highway and you have to go through that big merger in downtown Providence where there's like 5 highways that intersect at the same time. Or you're annoyed at the whole Washington Bridge saga and how half the bridge is not there anymore. Maybe you're disappointed in our political systems, or you're disappointed that we lost the Paw Sox and the Woo Sox now, which, I mean, Paw Sox is just a better name. Woo Sox sounds like, ooh. Not a great name right there. Maybe you're mad that the Superman building is still empty after all these years. Maybe you're mad that we're about to lose Hasbro to Boston. And you're wondering, where are they going to put Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head? Are they still going to be here? Are we going to lose them too? So there's lots of reasons to be upset with where you live. And in every place I've lived, whether it's Connecticut or New Orleans or here, people complain. People naysay. People insult or demean the place that they live in. And that includes us as Christians. We do the same. And from what I can tell, at least anecdotally, we talk down about the places that we live just as much as anyone else. And I feel a deep conviction that that isn't the right posture for our hearts to be in as the church. That's not the right posture. And to start us off in terms of scripture, I wanted to share a scripture from Jeremiah chapter 29 that Jeremiah shared to the Israelites of his day. And Jeremiah wrote, "Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Praise the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." Now, Jeremiah received this message from God at a time when the kingdom of Judah was failing badly and was falling into idolatry and into injustice. So God gave Jeremiah this future vision of Israel's upcoming defeat and exile at the hands of the Babylonians. And as bad as many Christians might think New Orleans is, or Providence, or Boston are today, they don't compare to Babylon at all. They don't compare to Babylon in terms of corruption, or in terms of cruelty, or in terms of oppression or idolatry. Because Babylon wasn't just distasteful for the Israelites. It wasn't just like, oh, that's not the greatest place in the world. Like, no, Babylon had committed specific violence against the Israelites. Babylon had oppressed them. Babylon had taken their homeland away from them. Babylon had humiliated them by turning them into servants and exiling them. And God still God still commanded the Israelites to seek Babylon's peace and prosperity, to pray for it, to be vested in its success. And if God wanted the Israelites to wish prosperity for Babylon, the land of their oppression and their exile, how much more does he want us Christians today in our cities in America to wish prosperity upon where we live? If God wanted the Israelites to treat Babylon well in the midst of their hardship, I'm confident that we have reason to treat Providence and Boston well today. And I think one of the most effective things that we can do to that end is to not complain about our cities, to not insult our cities, to not look for reason to demean the places where God has placed us. You know, whether we were born here, whether we immigrated here from another part of the country or a different country entirely, whether we came here to study at school or to get a job, we are where we are, and we have the biblical imperative to seek its peace and prosperity, not to dismiss it or to speak ill of it. And needless to say, what we say matters. And even if you're not a Christian, that's a pretty common sense thing to say, that what we say matters. But we also have some biblical foundation for that, particularly from a guy named James who wrote a really good book in the New Testament. And James has this to say about what we say. James writes, "When we put bits into the mouths of horses or make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal." Or take ships, for example. Although they are so large and driven by strong winds, they are still by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. The tongue, Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. James likes using fire right here. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be so. This should not be. So what we say matters, no matter the context. What we say has the potential to do great damage, like a forest fire lit by a very small spark. What we say also directs what we think, like the bit in the mouth of a horse or the rudder of a ship, which perhaps for our context, we ought to say like the wheel within a car. And that's true of all contexts. That's true of our family, that's true of our relationships, that's true of our friendships, that's true of our workplace or our school. What we say matters, and it has the potential to cause great damage and the potential to change the way that we think. So if we speak negativity about our cities and continue to do so, our hearts towards our cities will eventually be negative. So as the church, we need to stop being the naysayers. We need to stop being the complainers, the dismissers. And King Solomon wrote as much in the book of Proverbs. So in Proverbs 11, Solomon wrote, "Through the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is destroyed. Whoever derides their neighbor has no sense, but the one who has understanding holds their tongue." Church, let's not be those who destroy with our mouths. Let's not be those who deride. Let's not be those who complain about everything. Let's be those who can be upright, who can control our negativity, who can bless instead. Now, how do we make that shift from negativity to positivity? How do we go from being those who deride to those who bless instead? Well, Paul, in his letter to the Philippians, has a good recommendation. He has lots of those throughout his writings, but this is one of them. Paul wrote in Philippians 4, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." Think about such things. Now, what does that look like to think about what is true of your city? What personalities or characteristics make your city noble? What is pure in your city amidst all the imperfection? What are the lovely places in your city? What is admirable about the city's culture or history? What is excellent or praiseworthy about the arts or the businesses or the institutions in the area? Put another way in my language, what can you find that's worth complimenting in your city? Where do you see God at work in your city? How can you intentionally look for the good instead of the bad? Well, during my time in New Orleans, I built a pretty good collection of photos so I can somewhat literally show you what is true or what is noble or what is right or pure or lovely or admirable or excellent or praiseworthy there. And I want to share a few lessons that God impressed on me because I lived there and was looking for the good. And now a lot of people know about New Orleans cuisine, its cooking, its architecture, its music, and all of that is well and good, and I encourage everyone to seek that out and to try it for yourselves and to learn about it yourselves. But I wanted to share some things that might be a little bit more nuanced or a little bit more unexpected about life there. Now, one thing I love about New Orleans is the trees. Now, you might think, you can find trees here, Justin. Correct, you can. But there's some specific things about the trees there that I was able to learn from. I would spend countless hours reading the Bible or reading a different book or praying or listening or meditating, even having crucial conversations or phone calls by different trees in New Orleans. There's different spots where there's benches or there's fountains or there's parkland where you can congregate beneath the trees or be able to spend some time on your own there. And not only are they pretty impressive in appearance and provide good shade, which is really helpful down there because it's a subtropical climate zone, but they also show the intentionality and the intricacy and the care that God has created our world with. If you look at these trees, it's almost kind of looking like a giant spider above you, which is a little creepy to think about. But you can see all these different gnarled branches, all these different twigs, all these different scars, all these different kinds of leaves, or some of the trees are big enough they actually have little subplants growing on top of them. They got moss, they got ferns, they have animals that are crawling all around them. And so it's a pretty good meditative exercise just to look at them. And they show how much care God has created our world with. And therefore we can see how much, if he cares for these trees, how much does he care for us? And the trees also show longevity and endurance and how growth takes time, because a tree does not grow like that in a couple hours or even a couple of years. It takes decades or even centuries for trees to reach their maximum size. And if God has enabled the trees to grow so much over time through hurricanes and through floods and fires and everything else, how much more should we be patient and endure in our walks with him? Now, another natural feature of New Orleans I love is the sunsets. Now, sunsets are everywhere, every part of the world, but the flatness of New Orleans, it's kind of got this like bowl shape, which is unfortunate for the whole flooding factor. But its flatness and its different river and lake fronts help make golden hour extra golden because it just opens up more of the sky to see when instead you'd have different hills or mountains blocking the way. And I'd very often walk in the evenings to enjoy the sunsets and to try and connect with God then, because they're just so indicative of his power and his sovereignty and his workmanship. Because looking at those sunsets, it's like you're looking at kind of like a jewel in the sky or a big painting in the sky. I didn't even use a filter for that one. That one's just so pretty. That was actually the 4th of July. That's why there's all these little people around there. And when you're there looking at a sunset, it's just a really awesome opportunity to feel good in a small way, which it might sound weird to say to feel good in a small way, but if you ever want a reminder that God is still on the throne and that God is still sovereign, that God is so much bigger than we can imagine, and his goodness goes on and on and on and on, find a good spot to watch a sunset. I also went on a lot of walks around the city in general, and I would find different ways that residents would invest in their properties or the public spaces around them in different creative ways. Now, a few of these, there's a house that has a golden swordfish above the front door. There's a yard that has giraffes in it. Another yard that's covered in different glass bowls and ornaments. A park that has a ceramic pelican on top of another ceramic octopus or squid. There's a street sign that's covered in different pottery. And those things might seem kind of like eccentric or superfluous or unnecessary ways of investing in the world around us, but they brought a smile and a laugh to me when I'd see them. I think one way of summarizing some people's style in New Orleans, it's kind of like, if your wacky aunt went to a flea market and maybe she'd had, a few beers beforehand, and she was like, you know what, that would be great in the front yard. We could really use a swordfish there. And so it brought me a smile and brought me a laugh, and I'm sure it brought other people that as well. And those things might seem unnecessary, but they show how the neighbors invested in where they lived and how they loved where they lived enough to do something that was totally unnecessary and not to their benefit to give it value in their own wacky way, which is a way of demonstrating that the way that God loves us is not for his gain, and that when we love others, that doesn't always mean that we're going to get something in return. When we love God, we're not going to always get something that's to our material benefit, but love can be something that is sacrificial, and it can be done out of joy. Something can be a labor of love, and we might not get anything back, and that's all right. Because the truth is, we don't deserve God's love, and we're not materially rewarding God for the way that he loves us, yet he still does so. And the last photo album I wanted to share is of a garden I built at my last house. We had a great front staircase, kind of like this one, actually. And there's lots of steps. They're wide enough to put pots on and to put plants in those. And I can't make a ceramic pelican. That's not within my gifting. I'm not a glass blower. I can't make a bunch of glass ornaments to put on my front lawn. But I can attempt to take care of some plants. And most of them survived. I will say that. Not all of them, but most. And that was one of my main creative outlets for years. And over the time, the garden grew. And my apartment became kind of known as the one on that block that had the garden in front of it. Different strangers would stop by and say, they'd see me working on it, and they'd say, I always like looking at the plants here, or I always enjoy seeing this on my walks. And actually, because we're living in the social media age and people like taking selfies, there's a few people that I knew that would actually take selfies in front of those plants. One of my old roommates, his Facebook profile picture today is still him sitting down by that banana tree and those red flowers, those canna lilies right there, which is might not seem like much of a blessing, but maybe it's proof that I was doing something right. And when I left the city, I gave a lot of those plants away to friends that like plants, and many of those plants are still growing in friends' yards. One of my good friends, Bubba, he actually sent me a picture of one of the succulents that I sent him and all its little succulent babies that have since been planted around his yard. So God used that garden to teach me how sowing seeds and doing constant work of tending to the garden bears fruit, and it blesses others even if you're no longer the one who's actually doing the farming, which in this case it feels very literal because you're really cultivating a plant, but that's also true of our investment in others in the areas around us, that we can sow seeds and do the work and not see the fruit, but that fruit still is going to be there and still going to come. And so when we choose to see the good in our cities, when we choose to bless our cities, God reveals his heart to us. God reveals his heart to us in that. So what can you, right here in sunny Rhode Island and warm Massachusetts do? How can you identify what is good in your city? How can you be open to God's heart for this place? How can you bless where you live? Well, here's a few ideas. Well, maybe in this area that means appreciating the natural beauty around us. I showed you different aspects of that in New Orleans, but there's still natural beauty up here, even if the current landscape might not be that indicative of it at the moment. So maybe you could take a walk down Blackstone Boulevard, down in Providence, or walk around College Hill. Maybe you could go up to Boston even. You could go to Back Bay or Beacon Hill or the North End. Those are all really cool neighborhoods to have a tour. You could go down to Newport or to Plymouth. There's lots of cool spots to actually just look at the built environment around us. Maybe if you want to do something more natural, you could go for a run on the East Bay bike path or do a bike ride there. Maybe you could go for a hike up in the Blue Hills. And even though I still love New Orleans and miss it a lot, one of my favorite aspects of moving here is having a lot of opportunities to explore nature. Because living in a city, the best you could get was the park next door, which is still good, but it's not quite the same as being able to hike in the woods and the hills. Another thing that we can do around here is appreciate the diversity of our community, appreciate the diversity of all the different immigrant groups that have arrived here. I know at least at this church we have over 30 immigrant groups present, if not more. And so one way to appreciate that, maybe go get some food from a place that doesn't speak English or that's not American. Maybe invite someone over your house for food who is different from you, and just learn about them, learn about their culture. I also try to be a student of history, and our area is full of history. If you have any doubts of that, talk to Pastor Jim. I'm sure he could regale you about all different kinds of facets of this region's past. Now, both of our states here were founded for religious freedom. Massachusetts was founded for the religious freedom of the Puritans trying to escape England, and then Rhode Island was founded for religious freedom from Massachusetts. And so you see religious freedom in both states' history. And the Christian heritage of our nation and our freedom to practice and worship is directly descended from these two states. Now, Roger Williams, the founder of Rhode Island, considered it God's hand to be so involved in his settlement of this area that he named the city what? Providence. He considered it an act of divine providence that he was led to this place, that he was given the opportunity to live here. And the whole nation has been blessed by the freedom of religion that he established here. And actually, if you want a free history tour, his church, the First Baptist Church in America, is still standing, and it's open for tours now. So if you guys want to go down to downtown Providence, it's the big church with the white steeple before you go up the really, really steep hill to Brown. It's been renovated a little bit here and there over the years, but it's still fundamentally the same church. Perhaps you want to bless your city a little bit more creatively. Maybe you have the skills to build a ceramic pelican in your yard, or another ceramic figurine, or some glass ornaments, or plant a garden that the whole neighborhood can look at and can just enjoy watching. Maybe you have another skill or idea. I know one couple in the area that lives in Easton, they actually bought goats so they can have an attraction at their house. Not for the milk, not for the lawn mowing, not for the free fertilizer that they deposit there. They bought the goats that way their neighbors could stop by and be like, oh, you have goats. Can I pet them? Can I take a picture of them? And that way they open up a door to have a relationship with people they wouldn't otherwise talk to and potentially share their faith with them. So I don't know if goats is the way. Maybe someone wants to do that. Maybe a different animal. Maybe you can bless where you live, to be a little blunt, just by spending your money here. Maybe that means going to a local restaurant that you won't find anywhere else, instead of a chain restaurant that you could go to anywhere. Now, I love food. I can give you a good list of those. Let's see, we got Risoi, we got Aleppo Sweets, we got Lotus Pepper, we got Wara Wara, we got the Burgundian, we got Boro Bagels. Actually, if you guys want to try different things, there's a whole food hall of local food in downtown Providence called Track 15 at the old train station. So that's a good spot to start off. Maybe instead of traveling, spending money on going on a flight somewhere, you can save some money and some stress and spend your money here with a staycation instead. Maybe around the holidays or any other time of the year, you could go to local shops instead of buying on Amazon, as much as we love Amazon. Or even you could patronize a business owned by someone that goes to church right here at CIC. There's actually been different businesses I patronized during my brief time here that are owned by people here. So I get my hair cut from Francisco Perez. He's up there on the sound right now. So if you guys like what you see here, go talk to him. I also need some Christmas gifts. Like most people need Christmas gifts. And so I spent some money with Denise Senra, and she made some really great towels for my grandmother because she loves different holiday-themed towels, or show towels, that some might call them here. I needed a notary for some documents to get signed, and we have a lawyer here named Jennifer Velote Bro, who was able to give her a small amount of money to notarize those documents. And I know there's other people that own businesses beyond that. That's just my experience, keeping the money within the family. And above all, pray for your city. Pray for your city. Speak life over your city. Make it known that you love where you live, potholes and all. Imagine how beautiful it would be if that's something that this church is known for in this region, that this is a community that loves where it lives. Imagine the good that God can do in the people who think that the church might be nothing full of critics or judges because that's what they've heard culture talk about, but if they find someone who goes to church here or they come to visit here, they say, wow, that's not the case at all. This place is actually full of encouragement. It's full of love. It's full of generosity. It's full of positivity and action. These people really love where they live. these people might be really demonstrating what God's love towards us is like, the kind of love that sacrifices, the kind of love that keeps forgiving over and over and over again, the kind of love that chooses to see the good and not just the bad. Just imagine what God can do with that if that is our culture here. And with that, we're going to pray. Jesus, Lord, I pray for our congregation. Lord, I pray over our cities, God, whether it's Providence, Pawtucket, Boston, beyond. God, Lord, I pray that our heart, our posture towards these places would be one, Lord, of choosing to see the noble, choosing to see the good, Lord, choosing to see what do we love about this place? How can we talk about that? How can we speak life over this place? How can we be known for being people, Lord, that love where we live well? How can we carry out, Lord, the love that you have given to us with the place and the neighbors around us? Lord, how can you show us, Lord, what you want us to learn by loving this place? How can we get a better glimpse of your heart? Lord, how do you want us to love well and we can see you in that? Lord, how do you want us to love in a way that others can see how we love and can say, wow, this is encouraging, this is awe-inspiring, this is something different. These people don't just complain like everyone else, but these people actually love where they live. These people love the people that they're around. Lord, I pray that when we see people, Lord, on the street or in our neighborhoods, God, Lord, that we would be able to say, I'm glad that you're here, neighbor. I'm glad that we are where we are, God. Lord, I pray this for this church. Lord, I pray this over our cities. Let it be so in your mighty name. Amen. Amen. Pastor Randall has some announcements.